This week I'll be going over this good Ethereum documentation page. And I know some people don't like reading and going over it, and this stuff can be kind of confusing. So I'll just be going over one section of this website. At the top, you'll see there are different tabs: Home, Ethereum Basics, Roadmap, using Ethereum ecosystem guides. I might make other videos going over the other tabs, but for just this video, I'm going over the Ethereum Basics. On this website, there's some blue highlighting, which is you won't see from your when you load it up. It's just a highlighter tool. So let's get started. All right. So what is Ethereum? And Ethereum is an open source, public, blockchain-based distributed ledger. So essentially, in finance, like I'm not a big financial guy, but they have a ledger which tells you the transactions, so you can tell like when money came in and out. Um, and it's blockchain based. So if you know about blockchain, there'll be all that, and it's distributed. So instead of one person um, being in control of all the data. Instead, like one computer or one company, use a lot of different computers around the world, and all of them will combine to like pretty much give you the data when you need it. So when making a Ethereum transaction, you're not necessarily paying off the same computer or same database or whatever all the time. It'll be different nodes on giving you the ledger. Open source and public, and has smart contract functionality, which I'll get to a little more. Um, why does it matter? Interconnection is all you need. So the financial system is not available to everyone is one of the big concerns about this. Um, like if you live in the United States or a more developed country, you'll have a banking system, you get money, but in like country in third world countries or whatever, they don't necessarily have like good safe banks. Some people don't have bank accounts and whatnot, and it's a little more reliable if you can use this, which is like you only need interconnection, and then you could like access your money. Um, and then what are smart contracts? So when you think of contract, you also think of like contracts in the finance sense, possibly like you must do this. We wrote this all up. But in this case, smart contracts is pretty much like adding programming to this finance stuff. Smart contracts is like, if you do this, I'll give you this. And in code, it's sort of like mandatory. Contracts in real life can be broken a lot of time. That's also another motivation behind like blockchain or Ethereum or Bitcoin or whatever, because you can't mess with that. Like there's so many since you're dealing with so many like nodes around the whole world, and they have so many security things with that, like it's really hard to mess with, even if you wanted to. Um, it also makes like trust a non-issue, which is another reason why people like it. Like you're forced to like obey the rules a lot of the time. Um, One example, there's an analogy here with a vending machine. It's sort of like that. How like okay, with the vending machine, no one's around there, just you and the machine. You put in some coins, you push a few buttons, and then you can get what you want. And like barring like breaking the machine or whatever, like there's no like negotiating with the person, like the person like withholding your snack or whatever. If you're buying a snack at the store, it's like no, you push the buttons. As long as the like machinery is all working, you'll get your snack or whatever. Okay, so that's the analogy for that. And then you also hear Ether versus Ethereum. So Ether is, um, so there's an Ethereum network, and on there, the for transactions you have to use Ether, um, and it's a little easier to understand if you think of the miners who secure the transaction. So I'll just back up a little bit. So the blockchain is called the blockchain because the blockchain is like a list of transactions. So each block is like a different record on the blockchain. Miners or people who are trying to like get Ethereum are people who have to validate or secure the transactions, and they're looking for blocks to like work with. Like they're pretty much looking for work all the time. Um, Ether, like one use of Ether is for payments, or for like if someone's doing all this work for you to make sure that your payment goes through or whatever you want to do goes through, you have to pay them, and you pay them in Ether a lot of time, and that turns into gas. So whenever like you want to get something validated, um, you'll be paying them like money in Ether. Down here it says that Ether has many use cases such as store of value, medium of exchange, and unit of accounts. Um, These all sound like big fancy words, but a lot of these things are things that you'll see in natural money. Um, Store of value, like your dollar is different from your piece of paper right there. Like you can trade it around. Well, that's the medium exchange. Like you can trade the money around, and it's like, oh, everyone's like, okay, sure, that's a dollar. Like I see it's a dollar. It's also something called fungible, which sometimes it's mentioned somewhere else. But pretty much, like you don't necessarily care about like if you get that particular dollar back. It's more about if you get a dollar back because they all have like they're interchangeable. $1 is equal to another dollar. Like barring, oh, maybe that's your special dollar or whatever. Um, it's a unit of accounts, so it's not just like some abstract thing. It's like, oh, $1 has a monetary value one, um, and it has value. Like that's why you trade it. Ether use cases. I mentioned this before, but like there's a set amount of gas for every transaction you do. There's another section on gas, but I won't go into it. And typically, there's like a conversion rate of like Ether to this smaller unit called Gwei, which is like that's a billion. So like in this example, like you're in order to just send Ethereum um, from one part of the network to another, you have to pay that much amount of gas, which it looks like a pretty big number. But when you see that one ether is 1 billion Gwei, it's like not as much. But like these things start adding up, and that's why people mine and people just work for you. Because if the real value of Ethereum goes up, which has gone over time, this adds up quite a bit. Um, so Ethereum has some use cases. A lot of these though are kind of a little obvious. Like it's like how would you use money in the real world? It's pretty much replacing how a lot of money is used in the real world. Um, and then, but like you'll see, most people hear about Ethereum because of all the like trading and stuff. So Ethereum also has speculative value, and speculative um, stuff is when you're just trying to trade things and trying to get like a return on investment by just like buying and selling them. Like people do it with houses, to buy a house at a lower value and then like to sell for higher value. People do it with stocks. That's literally how the stock market works. So trading investment has been a big part of this whole Ethereum blockchain business. Yeah, it even says here sometimes it goes like 1,000 times the amount, just a few months. Um, this isn't really that important, but like it answers this question, and it mentions that like in real life, you can exchange like your dollar for a foreign currency, like yen or whatever for Chinese or like pesos for like Spanish, um, and like that's not as easy in for Ethereum or naturally like you know out of the box. Sure, maybe you could have like external system like, okay, I'll trade you this for this. Um, but that would require an economic abstraction in order to do that, and this is pretty much saying that that's probably not going to happen. Um, I mentioned before how a blockchain is just like a bunch of transactions and stuff, and when you add a new transaction or whatever, it's another block. So miners define blocks, and they're competing with each other to find a block so that like they can get like ether from it. And the way that this all works is that as the price of the asset increases, it'll bring in more miners. If that happens to everything, like if there's this job out there that was, let's say, let's say like flipping burgers was suddenly, or just something that people normally do, like mm, producing hair slippers or something, which is probably already a thing, but producing hair slippers was like a job and it didn't really exist yet. Um, and you put it at $200,000, people would be like, oh, wow, that's a high price. So more and more people will come, which will drive down the price of um, how much people are willing to pay for making hair slippers, which is probably why it's not really a thing as far as I know. But yeah, it'll bring more competition and it'll make it harder for everyone. Um, And then in this particular case, nowadays, it's so hard that you need like mining farms, like pretty much large amount of computing power because people have like you need more powerful computers and a lot of them, or like you'll join mining pools where you all agree, oh, okay, like you'll it's kind of like video games where you'll go after a boss or something, or like really hard monsters and you split the loot afterwards. So that's how kind of how mining pools work. Um, yeah, I said that in order for Ethereum to work, to be considered money, it had to have these qualities, so portability, durability, divisibility, fungibility, established history. Um, Portable, it's digital. Durable, it's digital, so it can be moved around. Um, it's divisible up to 18 decimal places, so it can be broken down like a lot, versus like dollars can only be broken down to like cents. Um, Fungibility was how much they can be replaceable, and they're somewhat replaceable. Like one Ethereum token is like still as valuable as another one in a lot of cases. Um, but what you don't typically find is like blacklisting of money, like or the odds that your particular dollar, like let's say you did something to it, like you put coronavirus on it, and then people are like, no, I don't want to have that dollar anymore, and then wherever you went, you can spend a dollar. Like that's a lot. That sort of thing can happen with like Ethereum tokens. Some accounts and addresses could be like blacklisted, like oh I don't accept your that particular token because I don't trust it. Um, so like that's where it has limited fungibility. One Ethereum token isn't necessarily equal to another one since the tokens have their history behind them. Um, and then established history is pretty much they mentioned this Lindy effect, which pretty much said that the longer something exists, the more likely it'll continue existing. Um, and then that's what the established history is. Like, is Ethereum like trustworthy? Does it do what it needs to do? Like, what does it do what it says it's gonna do? And according to this, it says that it does do a lot of what it says to do, like 99.98% of its life. So it's highly reliable, and that's also why, like, if your dollar wasn't like reliable all the time, then you would not treat it as money. You'd be like, I don't know if this is gonna work. Um, and yeah, the other 0.1% are like some hacks and security risks and stuff. Um, and then this is talking about the supply scheme of crypto, and there's two main approaches. Like either you say, okay, there's a limited amount of Bitcoin, which Bitcoin does do, or the other way to supply like Ethereum across the network is have a low, predictable, and hard to change issuance rate, which issuance is just like how much is supplied or the scheme in which it's supplied. So that's what Ethereum does. It has a low, predictable, and hard change rate that Ethereum like appears on the network. All right, next history network updates. Um, Ethereum was first described by I'm gonna butcher his name, but Vitalik Buterin. Um, he very much like saw Bitcoin. And wanted to combine it with smart contract technology. And I mentioned before that vending machine example. Like you want to like be guaranteed that oh, if you do these actions, then you'll get this thing on both sides. The seller wants to know that if they provide you with a certain service, you'll pay them, and then the buyer wants to know, hey, like I gave you the money, give me the thing I bought. So the smart contract technology is like meant for that. Um, some history. It was in 2014 in July to September. They were trying to sell Ethereum for Bitcoin. So 2,000 Ethereum was for Bitcoin, and then it went down to like this 1337, which is like elite and nerd talk. Um, Ethereum per Bitcoin. So all it was saved, or 20% of the 60 million, was saved for Ethereum Foundation's development fund. And I was wondering why like they're making such a big deal, like giving them that much like money potentially, because initially that was like 18.3 million, but then I realized like it's a pretty new technology, and like it seems like a lot of money sometimes, especially with the rising price of Ethereum. But it makes sense because you want Ethereum to be secure, and possibly like if you mess something up with security, like all hell will break loose, and yeah, you don't really want that. So it's good to have people like constantly developing. Like you need technology to be developed. Like people put more effort into it, or else it's just gonna break. Um, it's just network history. Ethereum has some network updates where it makes changes each time, so you'll see throughout the years. The latest one is like Mirror Glacier, um, and monetary policy. So I mentioned before how instead of having a cap supply of Ethereum, they have this minimum, or this they have the issuance rate. Essentially, the rationale behind the issuance rate right now is that they want just enough Ethereum to go out there to secure the network. So I mentioned before how like if something is more valuable, it'll attract more competition, and the in blockchain, more competition, more people working on the network, add some more security. So you just want enough incentive that people secure a network, but you don't want too much, and you don't want it to be like a fixed amount because then like you're possibly like arbitrarily limiting the amount of security on the network. Sometimes it has to be less, sometimes it has to be more, and this like variable amount like helps you do that. Um, yeah. So in order to modify this monetary policy, you need an overall consensus from stakeholders. So you'll hear the word stakeholders a lot, but stakeholders in Ethereum's ecosystem are pretty much the developers, the community members, those ecosystem spokesman projects, and the miners or other people on the network. Um, you'll see in the history that like the block reward used to be 5 ether for like this many blocks, and afterwards it changed to 3, and then changed to 2. Um, and there's some graphs here that I'm not gonna go over. The Ethereum Foundation, yeah, they're made to help support Ethereum. They currently have like about 7 teams working in these different areas. Research. Get client is a client written the Go programming language. Wasm is this WebAssembly thing, which pretty much it's trying to change how smart contracts are actually executed. So some low level stuff. Whisper and Swarm seems to be some communication technologies with Ethereum. PyVM, Trinity, and Viper all relates like Python-ish or Python contracts. Solidity is like its own new programming language for to write Solidity contracts or Ethereum contracts. They say it's similar to JavaScript and some developer tools. Funding currently, as of like 2020, end of 2020, they had this much Ether, which is equivalent to about 330 million. So that's their like funding. Although I think Ethereum has gone up since then, so this is probably more money. Um, Governance. Um, so this is pretty much explaining how Ethereum can change because Ethereum is just like technology and has rules and stuff, and the way technology works can change over time. And say that like there's two types of people on the network. Node operators, pretty much people that just run Ethereum, but they don't really like know that much about the code, so they'll just like download the software and like put it on their hardware. And then core developers, people actually work on the software, and they want to make sure that like the software is like good and stuff. So governments of this stuff. So essentially, this is explaining just abstractly consensus and how this all plays into like Ethereum and how changes go. So it's pretty much saying that humans in general or groups in general, they don't have all the same like values or incentives as other ones. So everyone has their own like incentives to survive, and you kind of have to live with that in life. And how you live with that, how you survive, like is pretty important. Um, so the ability of each group to coordinate around their common incentives is critical for them to affect change. So groups that can like work together and have common incentives can affect change. Like you don't have to have the same exact like incentives as the person next to you, but like you can like work aside some of those um, desires and just go after some that you both want, and then you'll have a successful relationship or whatever. Um, and that says that one group can coordinate better than another. It creates a power imbalance in their favor. So like there is incentive, um, besides like just being able to affect change. Like if you're a group that can work together better than other groups, it creates a power imbalance because like you're working there. Like some people say that teamwork like multiplies your efforts. So if everyone's like singular alone, and then you have this multiplicative effect of a group, like you'll have a nice significant advantage. But anyway, so on-chain governments versus off-chain governments. On-chain is pretty much solely online. Um, Pretty much each node might suggest some changes to the code of Ethereum, and then nodes with greater holding of coins will have more votes. And then pretty much like if enough nodes have vote, hey, we should make this change, it just kind of happens. And the pros of that is like it's pretty decentralized. Changes are pretty quick. Because like you're just voting like kind of like immediately. Um, But the cons are like if there's like low voter turnout, then like if there's not enough participation, then it won't work out. And it tends toward plutocracy, which is since nodes with greater holdings of coins have more votes. Um, Pretty much a plutocracy is like a government by the wealthy, and pretty much people who um, have more Ethereum will like control it, and then that could be kind of dangerous because then they might make rules that make them even more wealthier, and yeah. Um, Off-chain governments, like instead of like doing it like this by like this code version where it's like there's a very like coded out system of like, hey, push these buttons, submit this proposal, if everyone votes, it gets implemented. This is more like real politics where like you just have different groups who want different behaviors. Like I want like I want global warming. I want more puppies in there. I want like more cat treatment, whatever. Um, all these groups are like trying to do what they want to do and get their incentives out there, and then you kind of all like work together and try to vote. And then if you guys can reach a consensus among the stakeholders, then you'll just update and be like, okay, we'll change it to this. If you can't reach the consensus, sometimes what happens is that you'll have a hard fork. So forks in code is like you have the same code initially, and then you're like, okay, I'll do it my way, do it your way, and now like you have two different projects at that point. Um, and sometimes that does happen, and then but at that point you have to compete for like brand users, developers, mindshare, hash power. Like there's only so many resources out there, so pretty much that's some of the technologies will die, some of them will survive. Development, interacting with clients. So Ethereum clients use JSON RPC. Ethereum development basics. There's languages. Um, Solidity and Viper. Um, Clients are Go Ethereum, Open Ethereum. One is made with Go, one is made with Rust, and there's some developer forums. Patterns. This is just going over some code example patterns. Testing. There's some Truffle, Remix, Gantt, MetaMask. Oh, something I didn't know is that with MetaMask you can use your fake blockchain wallets. MetaMask is pretty much like a Chrome extension that has your blockchain wallets. I didn't know you could use like fake money in there, so that's good for testing. There's this table that's nice that just like it shows you that like when Ethereum is or when Ether is this much Gwei, and then like there's other units there. Debugging tips, some testing tips. So tooling, there's some IDEs here, some frameworks, some test blockchain networks, and there's some external resources that have some external articles, like this is a Medium article or Hacker Noon. Yeah, so that was a pretty long video. I'll just end it there. Hopefully this helps someone, and thanks. Bye.